So thank you everyone for joining and welcome to New York Sea Grant's Aquaculture Industry Resource Webinars. This is about the New York Farm Bureau. So before we begin, I want to share some info about Zoom features and our webinar procedures. I realize most people have spent time on Zoom, so in this post-COVID world, but just in case some folks are less familiar, this should help you out. I believe most of the folks that are currently on here live are very familiar with it, but there's a couple of features highlighted here that you can see. Please stay muted throughout the webinar unless you are speaking, and you're welcome to keep videos on or off, but if you're asking questions, please turn the video on. And questions can be posted directly into the chat box throughout the webinar, so you don't need to remember them until the end. But if you want to ask your question, please select that react icon, which will open the box, and you can raise your hand. I'll call on you. We're going to have a Q&A period at the end, and we'll likely hold questions just to make sure we get through all our speakers. So the goal of these webinars to provide information relevant to the industry in a way that is convenient. Ideally, we'd have in-person meetings, and these speakers would all get to attend in person, but logistically that doesn't seem to always work out. So trying to do them online and recording them, they'll be available on the New York Sea Grant website. I do have the link shown here, and there's also going to be a short survey at the end where industry members can request topics of interest for future webinars. That survey will be available to folks after that are watching the recording as well. Today's webinar in particular is about increasing industry awareness of New York Farm Bureau. Without a statewide aquaculture association in place, the New York Farm Bureau is an ideal organization to support and lobby on behalf of the industry. It also offers various benefits that you're going to learn more about shortly. So today, we're fortunate to have 4 speakers from various parts of the Farm Bureau. Their contact information is listed here. This info will be shown again at the end of the webinar, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves so they can provide you a clear understanding of their role. And so with that, turn it over to Kyle Wallach, and Kyle, take it away.
Thanks. So I'm Kyle Wallach. I'm the Associate Director of Public Policy for New York Farm Bureau, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview and short presentation on our policy development process that really starts and is fueled by our membership. Next slide, please. So the importance of being a Farm Bureau member, and when it comes to policy, is really the ability to impact agriculture and sharing policies and shaping those policies for the future of agriculture. And this all, like I said, starts directly from our membership. Actually beginning, this July going into the fall is the beginning of that process. And it ends with us educating legislators on the unique needs of agriculture and why it's so important. Next slide, please. So this is kind of the beginning of that process. So this is how it begins with step 1. There is, one of our members will have an idea on how to change something, how to improve agriculture in a way, and that they would take to their county meeting. Each member belongs to a county farm bureau, and that idea is submitted through their policy development committee. From there, that county will consider the idea. There might be discussion about it at a meeting, and then you might be asked to provide background or help them kind of understand where this policy is coming from, as our membership includes a wide variety of farmers producing everything from apples, dairy, aquaculture, you name it. Next slide. So then your next task would be to attend your county annual meeting, which takes place in the fall. And that's when this policy, this idea would get kind of shaped into what we call a policy resolution, which is, we support this or we oppose that, depending on what that policy would be. And the your annual meeting is when that policy would then be essentially voted on. And then that gets kicked up to our resolutions committee. And our resolutions committee is a smaller group made up of members from around the state. I think it's 12 members, plus 2 board members. And our resolution committee comes together in November at our State Farm Bureau office here in Albany, and they go through every policy in our book. In our policy book, it's about 160 pages of policies broken up by issue area and broken into sections. And that committee will support the new proposal, modify it, or reject the policy proposal. They kind of act as a filter for all these new resolutions that come in through every county farm bureau in the state. And then, if this idea is accepted, it, stays into this draft book, and that gets sent to our annual meeting in December. Next slide. So now, fast forward, we're in December at our state annual meetings, and now farmers from all throughout the state are there. So our annual meeting is broken into, we have delegates from each county based off number of members, and their job is to vote on all these policies that have come through this county process. And a simple majority vote turns that policy or that idea into our actual policy. And then the same happens at the federal level. We also have policy recommendations from our membership that get submitted to the federal, at the federal level, American Farm Bureau Federation, through their policy process. And it's the same concept, just at the federal level. Any questions on that? I thought maybe there's one more. I guess the last thing I'll add is that once that policy is in our policy book, that is what gives me and the other staff members on our public policy team the ability to go meet with legislators and lobby for that policy, whether we're lobbying for something or to prevent something. Go ahead, if there's any questions.
Go ahead, Eugene.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to raise my hand. Thanks, Kyle. So that goes from the county to the state to either being implemented in the state or going to federal. What is that then possible to take place within a calendar year, to go from presenting an idea to it being adopted?
So the ideas begin to get presented this time of year, this July, August. And then in October is really when the counties kind of submit their new policy resolutions. And November is when that resolutions committee goes through all of the new proposals for our December annual meeting. And after that annual meeting in December, that finalizes all of the new policies, or all of the policies. And January is when legislative session begins. So basically everything has to be done before January so that we in January can begin lobbying, if that makes sense.
All right. And if there's any, whatever questions or concerns leading up from that, whatever now to November period, there's some dialogue to get it into proposable form.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Lauren might even be able to help speak on this too. As a county manager, they kind of facilitate those county meetings, and they kind of also communicate with the policy staff, with the policy team, to get as much information as they can and as we can to make sure everybody kind of understands that new idea. So that way, because sometimes you're going to have a dairy farmer and an apple farmer, or an apple producer, maple producer, looking at a policy that they don't know much about, so they have to kind of rely on additional information where there is some.
Okay. Thank you.
Kyle, we are ahead of time, so I had a question as
Sure.
well. So on this number 6, New York Farm Bureau policy getting turned into the American Farm Bureau, does one hinder the other? So like if it can be a New York Farm Bureau policy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the American Farm Bureau policy, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Some things overlap. So I think the best example I could probably give is we have a policy regarding the Jones Act, but we have it in our state book as well as our federal book.
Got it. All right. Any other questions for Kyle? We'll have more time for questions at the end, but I figured I'd give you the opportunity since we are ahead of time. All right. Well, thank you, Kyle. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Denman. I'm the Associate Director of Membership Development and Engagement up here at New York Farm Bureau. So I work out of Albany, and most of my job is spent supporting our members, supporting our field staff, supporting all of our staff, and making sure that they have all the tools they need to be successful in identifying new members, making sure new members are taken care of, and going out and finding whoever they can. A lot of my job is spent strategizing, prospecting, and engaging. And thank you for having me on this call. It's great. You'll see my contact information is right there. Feel free to reach out to me if you've got any questions about New York Farm Bureau, how you can join, how you can get involved. And up at the top there is our 1-800 number. Make sure you press 0. That gets you right to one of our front desk staff. Feel free to shoot that email off. That'll get you right into a general email box. And then, of course, you can just go to our website and join that way. New York Farm Bureau, there are 52 county farm bureaus across the state, 62 counties in New York, so there are some that are combined. So Long Island and New York City is one large farm bureau. There's 998 members in that large farm bureau, making it our largest collection of members in the entire state, which is pretty cool. About out of those 998 members, I think it is, I think 560 of them are voting members. So when it comes to policy development and just overall Farm Bureau development, Long Island, carries a lot of weight down there, and we're really happy to have that many people involved. Overall for the state, there's right around 12,000 active members. New York Farm Bureau is a sum of the parts of all the agricultural places we represent: aquaculture, maple, corn and soybean, beef, you name it. We support all agriculture across the state. That also includes breweries, wineries, distributors, producers, restaurants. If there's agriculture involved, we're involved. Next slide, please. So anyone can join. I get a lot of questions around organizations that want to join, or they want to purchase multiple memberships. We have an enterprise option for that. That is for if you're a business owner and you've got 9 employees, you can purchase a membership for all those employees right from one membership. Real easy, real straightforward. Makes it pretty easy for billing and setting up procedures. If you're an organization, if you're a college and you want to purchase memberships that way, it's real straightforward, it's real easy. And then obviously we have our individual option as well. One-to-one, you could do it that way if you would like. For our Long Island and New York City due structure, it is $165 for the year, but you could save yourself some money if you choose an auto renewal option, and if you go with an electronic version of our bi-monthly newspaper, Grassroots. So that could get it down to $154 if you want to go that route. If you are north of the city, Rockland, Westchester County North, it's $110 for the counties if you happen to live up there, if you know somebody who does. So with the same savings, you can get it down to $99 if you're in one of those counties. Next slide, please. And just here is a list of our benefits. These are our benefit partners that we work with: Granger, Case, Wyndham Hotels, Jordan Energy Solar, Regal Cinemas, Caterpillar. We have a number of partnerships that we work. These are all through American Farm Bureau. So we have a great contractual relationship with them. And most of these benefits you could start taking advantage of day one. Forward, you got to wait 30 days. And I believe the cannabis certificates through Syracuse University, you got to wait 30 days as well. But there's a ton of savings out there. I know anytime you're looking at another organization I got to be a member of, they'll start to add up. So we do what we can to help offset some of that cost through discounts like this. On top of these benefits, you would get access to our grassroots newspaper, which keeps you up to date on happenings through policy, congressional visits. It's a bi-monthly communication. We put a lot of work into it. There's a lot of great info in there, and the people who utilize it get a lot of value out of it. We also offer a weekly e-news that goes out every week, 52 times a year, that gives you weekly updates on everything going on. Goes out Thursdays. It's great to kind of click through that and see what's going on. We also offer a ton of webinars throughout the years to help with networking, professional development. You name it, we try to find ways to provide resources to our members so they can connect more and find ways to support each other. On top of this, we do also have a workers' comp safety group, 486. So if you do have employees and you're looking for workers' comp coverage, or if you want to re-examine your policy, be more than happy to take a look at that and see if we are able to save you a ton of money, because 486 is a really good group. They pay about a 42% dividend year to year. So I think those are my 3 slides, actually. Does anybody have any questions for me? Anything on just like State Farm Bureau, what we do to support the counties?
Tom, I was
All right.
curious, you mentioned voting member versus active member. Could you describe what that difference is?
Yeah, so a voting member is somebody who is directly connected to agriculture. Somebody who is producing something on land, somebody who is producing materials used by farmers, or somebody who is leasing or renting land to a farmer. So in our state, we have 12,000 active members. Right around 9,500 of them are what we would consider voting regular members. That ensures that as an agricultural association, that we maintain the voting power within farmers. It just ensures that our policy is consistently driven by people who are in agriculture.
Great. Does anyone else have any questions for Tom? I did have one. I'm glad you covered the enterprise option, because that was something that I had been asked about in advance of this. And you mentioned that colleges could also be. What about like a tribal nation? Is it possible for them or other nonprofit organizations?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The enterprise option is actually used a lot by Amish and Mennonite communities, surprisingly, because it allows them to provide a Farm Bureau benefit to their community, but be able to kind of focus all of the communication through one person. So for them, it's really easy and straightforward that way. But any nonprofit, any incorporated LLC, non-incorporated, any family that wants to purchase a bunch of memberships, it really was designed so you could purchase a bunch of memberships, but be able to control all of the billing and communication through one central point.
Okay. Very cool. And then we do have a question from Donna Lanzetta. I don't know if you know this, but do you have any idea how many aquaculture members there are?
Give me 1 second and I could actually tell you that. Every year I do a big data dive for all the counties, and I do these snapshots. And commodities is actually one big piece of that. And one thing I'm doing this year is creating one for New York and all encompassing. So I could tell you exactly how many reported aquaculture members we have. Let's open up the spreadsheet here.
Yeah, because I think that's a big thing too. If we can increase that number, then the aquaculture community has,
And one thing I will say, New York is an incredibly diverse state when it comes to agriculture. I mean, you name it, we've got it. You contact an Iowa Farm Bureau and they're like, well, we do 95% corn. I think one of our great benefits is we do everything. But our boards and our county farm bureau boards are only as strong as they are diverse. You know, that allows us to lobby for more. You know, I always tell people, they're like, well, I feel underrepresented. Well, do you go to your county farm bureau meeting? No. There's your answer. You know, get involved. I can tell you right now, we have 37 members that have reported they are involved in aquaculture.
Okay.
So obviously a data set is only, it's all self-reported, but that's what we have currently.
Yeah. And I want to say off the top of my head, just on growers that I'm aware of, and I think this includes the state hatcheries, you know, I want to say maybe around 110, 115. So for the private entities, that number is even lower. So yes, Eugene.
Yeah, and it's also, yeah, spread out. So like say you have, wishful thinking, so you have 10 farms, they could be in 10 different counties, so every county meeting would have one person. It's not really at that granular level, county level, you know, anything like dairy, for example. Is that does the system function to accommodate like that dispersed industry, such that there might only be one aquaculture entity per like county?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We can drill the data down that far. So there's 37 in the entire state, and
no, I mean functional. So if somebody has
yeah.
an idea that they want to
this might be slightly under what I'm going to cover.
Okay.
Just because from the local level. So spoiler alert.
All right. No, that's great. I'll let it go then.
Sure.
No.
And if I don't cover it, of course, re-ask the question.
Yeah.
So.
Anyone else have any questions for Tom? Obviously, we'll still have time at the end. So.
Yeah, thank you.
And so up next is Lauren.
Hello. So hi everyone. I'm Lauren McGrath. I'm a New York Farm Bureau staff member, but I'm out here on Long Island. My office, which I'm actually probably 20 feet away from Rob, we're right in Calverton. I've born and raised on Long Island. I live in Wading River. So I am your like field agent in this region for the state. My contact info is there on this first slide, but again, we'll wrap it up and we'll cover that at the end. So if you want to head to the next slide, Barry, that'd be great. So what is a county manager? What do I do? How do I work with members? So I have a little bunny rabbit there because we're sometimes kind of thought of as a jack of all trades. So Jack Rabbit. We are your liaison between the state farm bureau and your county farm bureau. So as mentioned, all members are members of a county farm bureau. It's a bifurcated system where when you join your county, you're a member of the state as well as the American Farm Bureau Federation. The importance of our organization is its structure, which kind of speaks to what Eugene had brought up, which is that we are a grassroots organization, which means everything starts at the county level. When you come to your county farm bureau meetings and you bring up your policy issue or idea, that's where the first, in fact, county farm bureaus existed before anything else in the system. The American Farm Bureau came, don't quote me on this, but like I think it was like 20 or so years after the first county farm bureau existed. So it wasn't something that started top down. It's always been from the bottom up. That's how we build our policy. That's how we direct the organization. Speaking to what we've kind of talked about before with regular like voting members, it's important that the policy is coming from the people it impacts. So the importance of being a member and being engaged is that's how you tell us what's important. That's how that system works. So as far as my role, like I said, I'm kind of a liaison between the two organizations. I'm your local contact. I'm your boots on the ground. I'm probably a little bit more involved unless it's very extreme on the local level. If there's a town issue or something of that nature, I'd probably be your first point of contact for those kinds of things. But I also kind of, it's hard to say what we do because it's so many different things. We do a lot of work to kind of streamline our volunteers' work to ensure that information is getting to them, that they are able to be engaged, you know, whatever it may take. And we kind of we'll answer any questions you have, kind of thing, and we'll get you involved or in touch with those people at the higher levels as needed. So that kind of is like a 30,000 foot view of the county manager and what kind of work we do. So that's where I would be your first point. For those of you who are here from the New York or Long Island region, I would be your point of contact. If you want to jump to the next slide, you'll see that I am not alone. I'm part of a staff of, I believe we're 9 folks. This is a beautiful color-coded key to who does what. I am beige down at the bottom there, but you'll see that there is a field agent or county manager responsible for all the territories throughout the state. Same deal. That would be your point of contact for those areas. They help kind of facilitate those like the direct interactions with members and kind of help you. They're the people who are, you know, organizing those policy development meetings and encouraging those members to show up and go through that process so that those ideas are shared and policy can be developed in that process. So yes, and if you're interested in joining, someone like me would probably be your best first point of contact if you have a direct question about the County Farm Bureau. But of course, we all work very closely together. So there's not really a wrong answer of who you can reach out to from New York. It's just that, you know, if you want to, I mean, you can, no one's going to stop you from going to Albany, but if you're on Long Island, it's probably closer to come see me, and I'll direct you as needed to my colleagues across the state. So again, that's kind of the overview of my role within the system. Like I said, a big part of what we do is help ensure that people who want to get their voice heard are able to, but that does start with membership. It's really important to us that our members guide the organization. Our members are farmers, and that's really, sorry, I see Donna in the bottom there. New York City is included. We're based on a county system, so that's why you see like Kings County, Richmond County, but it includes all of the, I always say like I'm Manhattan to Montauk. So everything in that realm would be my territory, but all areas of the state are covered. The main reason that you see some grayed out in the Adirondacks is because that's where there's really no agriculture happening, because it's all the protected forests and things of that nature up in the mountains there. Not to say that there couldn't ever, I guess, be a county farm bureau there. They just don't have active agriculture in that area at this time. So yeah, so that kind of covers my role. If anyone has any questions, feel free. I probably went through that quickly, but
Eugene, did that cover your question?
I guess, I mean, it's nice looking at this map here. I guess, so my question would sort of be, just to elaborate a little. So say, what would it be, like local cohos and Bailey's jurisdiction and
Bailey's region, yeah.
I can't see where's where, and say Hudson Valley. These are the two, like, say, bigger recirculating farms, right? They're in different counties, but they have similar concerns, or
yeah.
Like, so just assume they agree with each other, but they would have to be proposed in one of those 2 counties. Is there any kind of crosstalk, you know?
Yes. So
yeah.
So there can be. There are times, I mean, we, within this system of field staff or county managers, we do talk a lot about issues that come up that we start to see in multiple areas of the state. But generally speaking, it would be, it would be that local, your policy development meeting where you're bringing up those ideas. And I will say that while policy is adopted across the state, there is capability, I guess you could say, within our bylaws for a single county to dissent from a policy decision, to essentially say that, you know, the state may have agreed that this works for us, but we actually don't feel it works for us. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it's really, it's very much member driven. And the input from the members is really important to us. It really is our guiding principle. So I think there are probably a lot of instances, and I think that's just goes to another benefit that may not necessarily seem monetary of joining the Farm Bureau, is that, you know, you're going to participate in these meetings and you'll meet the folks doing the same kind of work in the industry across the state and be able to start those conversations and kind of build that, like, that coalition mindset of what kind of things are you seeing. I mean, a lot of times, especially for Long Island and New York City region, there's a lot of interest in, I know that anyone from above the Hudson Valley would kill me for calling all of that upstate, but I am a Long Islander at heart, and that is how I learned it. But you know, a lot of the issues we see are here, they tend to travel up. So there's a lot of eyes on what goes on Long Island first. But that being said, I mean, there's urban areas in many parts of the state, so it's not, our issues are not that unique. Our geography certainly is. We are surrounded by water, so in terms of our topic of the day, we probably have a much larger stake, but that's not to say that there isn't aquaculture happening throughout the state. There certainly is with the hatcheries and such. So yeah, if that answers the question.
Yes, and just to round it out then, so if there is like an issue that's just common to everybody and, you know, a certain type of aquaculture, you know, there could be discussion, but it would among the industry folks, but then it would have to be introduced in one county and then it could make it to the state level from there.
Yeah, so our county annual meeting is where we would discuss and refine the verbiage of that proposed policy, which would then be represented by our delegates at the state annual meeting. So generally speaking, the number of delegates is correlated to the number of members we have. Another reason that membership is important, because when we hit a certain level of members, we do get an extra delegate, which is an extra vote. So it does increase the value of the policy that's put forth locally. I believe at this point with the current system, we have 6 delegates that go from this region. But I'm always saying we could do more. We've done it in the past. But yeah, so those folks would be the ones who then go on to the state annual meeting, which this December will be in Verona, New York, right? I'm not, okay. Like I said, Long Island girly, that's foreign territory up there. But yeah, so that will be where those discussions would take place, and that policy could either be amended or adopted for the state level. So it's always helpful, again, going back to what Tom said before, you will get out of Farm Bureau what you put into it. So if you are able to come to these meetings to bring your voice forward, like that's how that policy starts, is really, like I said, it's a grassroots process. We hear from you first and it goes from there.
Great, thank you, Lauren.
Sure.
I had just one kind of follow-up question building on that, because this was something that a farmer had asked of me prior. So one member, so kind of like what Eugene was saying, right? So I'm going to do it too, call it all upstate. In the upper regions of New York, the fish farms are far more spread out than on Long Island, where you have a higher density of oyster farmers. One member attending, that one person's voice is just as heard as 10 dairy farmers at the same meeting, right? That's what you're saying.
Oh yeah, and I think that that's something that we see, especially, I mean, again, I see through the lens of Long Island. This is where I've always been, where I've always worked, and we have an incredibly diverse agricultural industry here in general. And I do think that, again, going back to what Tom said, you know, we have a lot of commodities represented on our board of directors. That's really important to us because that's a first kind of line into those industries. So your voice matters. And what I've found is, you know, the strength of Farm Bureau is the collective. You know, when you go with like a very specific trade organization to lobby, you have one issue. But when you have a coalition of farmers across industries saying like, this is important to our field, and kind of that camaraderie that it's built, there's a really, I mean, Farm Bureau's voice is highly respected at the state and federal level. So it really does help kind of push those things through. And I've very rarely seen, I mean, it's important to be able to educate each other so that you can kind of help work through those policies. I mean, we have, you know, guys that grow grapes going up to Albany to talk about how important an aquaculture issue is. You know, it's not something that isn't going to happen because, you know, but like I said, they won't know that issue exists unless we have that voice first from that industry person coming to those meetings saying, this is the issue. And that voice comes from being a member and being involved.
Great, great. Anyone else have any questions for Lauren at the moment? Otherwise, we'll move on to Rob. All right. I'm going to stop sharing for a moment so we can hear from Rob. And Rob is the director of the Long Island Farm Bureau.
So thank you, Barry. I'm Rob Carpenter, for those of you that don't know me. And I've been here on Long Island for approximately 40 years, working to help farmers of all shapes and sizes and commodities be able to survive and continue. So Kyle and Lauren and Tom did a great job of kind of explaining Farm Bureau, its roles and the processes. But I thought I'd touch a little bit on a couple of actual examples of what we've been able to accomplish and how it's been done over the years, just to give you a little bit of an understanding. And I'm going to speak about a couple of Long Island issues that have really shaped the aquaculture industry here. So going back to probably the late 1990s, early 2000s, the state had ceded the underwater lands in the Peconic and Gardeners Bay to the county of Suffolk on the condition that the county develop an aquaculture lease program, basically to grow oysters. So one of our Farm Bureau members, Karen Rivara, who I'm sure many of you know, came to Farm Bureau one day and said, hey, the state has done this. We need to help them understand about agriculture so they can develop a program that works, because I'm interested in growing oysters and creating a hatchery here on Long Island. So Karen got involved in Farm Bureau and put forth some policy. Many of those policies are actually still on the books today. And with the help of my predecessor, Joe Gergella, went to the county and had numerous conversations with the county executive at the time, the county legislature, and county staff to explain to them the issues that we needed protection from and the ability to create and actually grow and harvest in the waters. So that program actually resulted in the formation of the Suffolk County Aquaculture Lease Program, which is still in existence today. And that's been a really positive thing, as there's probably, and I'm going to hazard a guess, 25 to 30 oyster growers leasing underwater lands in those waters today. So that's something that Farm Bureau policy, the creation of and the implementation of, actually led to something that was very helpful and beneficial to farmers. But that work does not stop just with policy or the creation and the solution to an issue, because ongoing, as part of that legislation, the county has implemented what they call review periods. And we just came off of the first 10-year review process, where the whole program was reviewed and people had the ability to comment on what was positive, what was negative, what works, what doesn't, issues, benefits, and so on and so forth. And that was a pretty arduous process, because in that process and timeline, which didn't help that it was during COVID, of course, but in that process, many groups came forward to say, hey, this was a concern for us, or things have changed in the water that we need to look at. So Farm Bureau actually was granted and had a seat at the table to be able to continue to advocate for the benefit of the growers at that time. We don't always get everything that we want, but I think that without the advocacy of Farm Bureau at the table, the program would be much weaker than it is today. Going back to Karen and the policies that she put forth, she also talked about and put in policy into the Farm Bureau policy book, things such as DEC regulations and how they could be amended, things on the federal level, maybe such as Army Corps of Engineer permits, as well as working on, as Kyle mentioned earlier, the Jones Act policy, which was a local policy that was suggested and implemented here by one person that not only made it into our policy, but to state policy as well, and then was passed on to national and is in the American Farm Bureau policy. So Eugene, in answer to your question, one person can do all of that and has the opportunity to do it. And there has been successes that have been documented that are in existence today. I think just a couple of other things that we look at here. There is currently a push for a new type of aquaculture, which is, well, not new, but new relatively to being allowed here in New York waters, which is the growing of sugar kelp and the marine plant industry for those benefits. And Farm Bureau has, I believe, created policy for that and is supportive and is working on it with our partners here on the island, as well as with DEC and others in the county, to try to effectuate some sort of program that allows for leasing of waters to be able to grow this new type of crop as an alternate to oysters, because kelp is grown usually during the winter time. There are many regulatory issues that need to be worked through, and there has been obviously studies done. And does it work? How does it work? And we've looked at other state models, but Farm Bureau does remain at the table looking to help the growers get this program implemented, and actually worked in trying to get a New York state law changed to allow for the growing of kelp in New York state waters. I believe last year that bill was vetoed due to some concerns, but we continue to work to try to push to solve that regulatory issue. And then just in wrapping up, one other thing of note that we do push for when we go to Albany, and Long Island does bring a large number of delegates, and we cover many different segments of policy. But in that delegate body that we bring when we go to Albany are a number of aquaculture growers, and they represent the policy of New York and the ability to speak on behalf of all the growers here, whether they're in a state program, a county program, or even in local town waters. And they do a pretty effective job of educating our senators and our assembly people. We meet with DEC, we meet with Department of Ag and Markets, sometimes with the Department of Labor. So we're pretty active in having conversations with the powers that be to express concern, whether it's economics, whether it's regulatory, whether there are practices and procedures that maybe could be handled better on a state level, and that all comes from policy. But I know we're currently working on things such as the Jones Act, the ability to work on potentially dealing with bird mitigation measures and trying to get DEC to understand the positives and negatives of some of those practices to see if we can get some of those rules changed. So there's really a great opportunity for individuals to affect policy and change policy, but we need to know from all of you what the issues are so we can start working on them. So happy to answer any questions, and I hope I stayed within the time limit.
No, that's great. Appreciate it, Rob. I'm gonna share my screen again, but yeah, if anyone has any questions, by all means, you can enter it into the chat or you can raise your hand.
I'll just add that you could find our policy book. There's an electronic copy on our website. And you can look at the aquaculture section or any of the other sections on there. I could actually put a link.
Go ahead, Eugene.
Question, I got to think about how to phrase it. So it was interesting that, and thank you, Rob. It's interesting that you brought up, kelp, because that's an extremity, but even oysters say are quite a bit different than recirculating aquaculture systems inland up here, upstate up here. not an upstate. Does that matter, or is this just the Farm Bureau? Are you like subsectioned out to different industries? Because aquaculture is going to be quite a different beast than, you know, what you call dairy or poultry or anything like that. It's quite a diverse umbrella term. Does that matter at all?
I don't think it does, because no matter what the issue is in any of the commodities, farmers are farmers.
Okay.
And if it's, let's say, a disease problem in the dairy industry, or let's say Phytophthora, which affects squash and pumpkins, or whether it's vibriosis, or let's say any of the diseases that might affect recirculating fish, bacteria, or, and I'm not familiar with your particular industry, but all of those are problems in an agricultural operation that needs somebody in government to look at them. And so we embrace, I think, as Tom or Kyle said, all of the different segments of the industry. And we don't look at it as us versus them when it comes to different farmers, because we're all in the same boat. And being that only about 1.5% of us are farmers, that's a pretty small number. So there's definitely benefits to being unified and supporting each other across commodities in the long run.
Okay, yeah, that kind of is my big question that I've, or unknown that I've had about Farm Bureau, because aquaculture being small and spread out does not seem to have a lot of clout if we want something done up in Albany. But being umbrellaed into a broader just agriculture, you said farmers are farmers. I think that's a good way of putting it. That kind of buys us into agriculture, which then does have some teeth and can get somebody's ear up there.
That's exactly correct. And I'll give you an example. So Kyle, who works in Albany, and I, who work on Long Island, did what I think is a pretty good job representing the fishing industry when it came to the horseshoe crab bill. And so we worked together to help that segment of commercial fishermen to try and get a veto or to get a bill stopped. And now we're going to work on hopefully a veto by the governor. But it's for a small group of people who are kind of isolated here on Long Island with a specific issue that they had. So I would imagine, for example, if there was the same issue in a recirculating operation for the fish in the rest of New York, it would be the same issue. There might be, let's say, half a dozen operations that have that particular issue that still need to be looked at as a whole. And I think that's the strength of Farm Bureau, is that we're watching for all types of agriculture.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great description, Rob. And yeah, Eugene, I agree. As I connected with Kyle and spoke with him and Rob and Lauren more, realizing the value of this, which is why I wanted more farmers to be, aquaculture farmers to be aware, because it is the avenue that's needed without an aquaculture association.
Yeah, and Don had a good comment. Aquaculture is agriculture. So that was my hope, is that instead of being an outsider, it could be roped in and get all the benefits and voice that other agriculture.
And I'll put a clarifying comment on that, Eugene. That's only if you're a Farm Bureau member.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So that's really the key to a lot of these discussions, is Farm Bureau just doesn't go out and do this for everybody. We do it for our farmer members. And that I think is really, really, really important.
Yeah, I'm just trying to draw this out for our farmers so that they can, so they can make a decision. I bet.
Thank you, Robert. I look forward to becoming a member of the Farm Bureau. I think I can confidently state that I'm the only ocean farmer on the panel or in the room today, and I think I have very strong beliefs about farming in the ocean and how important it is for our future and for fighting climate change. And I really look forward to bringing those discussions into the Bureau and into New York State and everywhere that they need to go. But thank you for putting this together, Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. Yeah, she's definitely the pioneer of ocean farming here in New York, so. Does anyone else have any questions? I did put up on the screen everyone's contact info. Thank you all for joining. Thank you to our speakers from New York Farm Bureau. You can also find Lauren had put that nice map together to show all the different county relations managers where they're at. I put the link there on the screen so that way you can find contacts. I'm not positive because I feel like there was less names there, but either way, I think you'll find the information on the website.
Yeah, you can find, it'll show you actually on the New York Farm Bureau website, there's a map that you can click of the county and it'll bring you to the information for each spot.
Perfect. And for all of those that have joined and even those that are watching the recording of this, if you don't mind taking this 4-question survey, that would be very appreciated. The link for those watching the recording, the link should be posted below the presentation link. This survey gives you the opportunity to provide feedback, request topics, and also a little selfishly for me, I need to report on potential impacts that these resources have for industry members. So if you answer that question, that'll help me with that. And then before I let everyone go, any last minute questions? No? All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Thank you to our speakers from the Farm Bureau, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good day, guys.